Usually on Deshbhakt conversation, when we do such a conversation, it's always face to face. But we are, of course, going to make an exception because we have an exceptional personality with us. Very, very happy to have Mr. Arun Shourie join us here for a conversation. And it's not going to be a normal conversation. It's going to be a pretty interesting one because he has a new book out, The New Icon, Savarkar and the Facts. And why did he elaborate on Savarkar and the facts? That's also very, very important to discuss and debate. Arun Shourie, many thanks for joining us here on Deshbhakt Samvaad.
I'm delighted to be here as one of the admirers of Deshbhakt.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to hear that from you. And we're going to have a lot of questions for you. I have been spending some good amount of time. This is my first detailed read of 2025, and I think 2025 is going to be controversial. It's a thick book. Before we start, and there is so much to talk about in this book, but before we start, when I was researching about this, and I was just seeing exactly what is being written and what is being said, already there are a lot of allegations coming against you. Besides the book, the fact that why are you writing it? Is this not a hit job? Aren't there contradictions in Savarkar and Arun Shoure himself? So why Savarkar at this point of time? After so many books that you have written, what was the need that compelled you to write about Savarkar?
So the first point about these people who take the trouble of abusing me or doubting my motives and all, I am not on social media. I am not on Twitter. I don't know how to get on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, not on this Instagram business. So they are probably just wasting their effort, and also my attitude is that of a Marathi writer once. He said, "You believe the worst about me." That I am a lecher, I am unfaithful to my wife, I am a bad father, everything. I'm a drunkard. I don't return people's money, anything. But what about the facts?
Okay.
So I am impervious to what they say. Second is Savarkar for two reasons. I think one is that he is being now resurrected. He's a forgotten man, a marginalized man, even while he was alive, and now suddenly being resurrected. I feel that this is part of a project to erase Gandhiji, because Gandhiji is the great nuisance to them, the great obstacle for them in their plan of an authoritarian regime, an authoritarian religion, and so on. And secondly, that if Savarkar's ideology really is internalized, then India will become an Islamic state in saffron, and a Hinduism itself will be perverted.
Yes.
So it is very necessary to open up what Savarkar really thought, what he wrote, what he advocated, because all these people, these people who abuse me on the one hand, as well as those who are lifting him up, they have not read Savarkar. It is quite evident.
That's very interesting that you mentioned Pakistan in saffron, is because there is so much of conversation that goes about Hinduism is equal to Hindutva and the refusal to separate the two while they are actually antithetical. We'll get to that. And Savarkar's point of view is going to upset a lot of people there also. Before I get into the cow, the caste, Savarkar begging in front of Linlithgow, one thing that I wanted to understand is the process of this book. This is not Arun Shoure's understanding of Savarkar. This is not a rant. This is not a distillation. It seems that you wanted to be this book as a bit of a academic book, and that is why there are quotes on quotes on quotes. So is this Arun Shourie speaking, or is this Savarkar speaking in this book?
Well, it is Savarkar speaking. The quotes and all that you notice, there are 600 citations probably, and most of them, apart from British archives, apart from contemporary records, are actually Savarkar speaking and writing himself. That is why the book begins with a couplet by a Bihar poet called Kaleem Ajiz. And he said कि हम कुछ नहीं कहते हैं, कोई कुछ नहीं कहता, तुम जो हो तुम ही सबसे कहलवाए चलो हो। तो जो वो कहते हैं हम तो वही रिप्रोड्यूस करते हैं, उस पर लोगों को इतना रंज होता है।
So the irony of this book is that whoever it might so upset, it's Savarkar who's going to do the upsetting. You are just basically quoting him.
Yes.
Because that's exactly, I think you wanted to rub that point in. Because you start on page 3 with not the elephant, the cow in the room. Because Savarkar's views on cows, because it is useful. We should look after it, not worship it. Gau palan karo, gau pujan nahi. Let us nurture cows, not worship them. We should look after them as long as they are useful. When human interests are no longer served by it, cow protection in the extreme should be avoided. He's used words like pagalpan, stupidity, murkta, shuddh murk, unadulterated foolishness, shuddh murkta. What
These are all
propels?
words. These are all words to describe, extraordinary reverence for the cow. And he says, as you rightly say, that the cow is a useful animal, like a horse, a dog, a donkey. So use it and look after it, so that you can use it.
But what drives him to say stuff like, we have heard that cow urine has medicinal qualities, something that the IIT director these days in Madras is really working hard on. But bhai, he asked, what doesn't? One's own urine has medical qualities, as Gaumutra has, as one's own urine also has medical qualities. Should we keep imbibing our Panchagavya on every religious occasion? Brandy also has medicinal qualities. Poison has medicinal qualities for some ailments, for persons who have those ailments. So, what was the kind of reaction when he said these things? And was there an ulterior motive for him to say this?
No, he was a rationalist in regard to our beliefs, in regard to our practices. He was a rationalist, even in regard to some of our so-called scriptures, or the pothis, as he used to always call them, which we revere, like Manusmriti and all. He examined them as a rationalist would. And that is why my first chapter, substantive chapter in the book, is devoted to, it says much to learn. We have much to learn from him. And cows is just one of the items that I have illustrated this with. For instance, our worshipping these navagrahas, or doing something for Shani, something for Mangal. That he used to say, these are planetary bodies. They are going to continue in their orbits, whether you worship them or not. They are just inert bodies, and therefore they do not know what you are thinking, what you are pleading with them for. So he tried to educate us again and again on these matters.
Including the very, very hot, contentious topic of vegetarian versus non-vegetarianism at a time when China is beating the shit out of America in terms of AI and robotics, and our obsession with vegetarian and non-vegetarianism, where he actually is using Manusmriti also. And Savarkar reproduces, and you're right, passages from Manusmriti to show that Brahmins and Kshatriyas partook of animals and birds in many yagnas, and during Shrad, eating and serving meat is extremely important, imperative duty of the Brahman. This is stuff that will get people into trouble if they write something like this today. And Savarkar wrote it so many years ago.
And these things are contained in his collected works, which are available today, but nobody will raise an objection to them because they have not read them. And you see, in the case, for instance, he says that whether you will eat beef or pork, this is a matter for your bodily constitution. It's a matter to ask the doctor. It's not a matter to look up in some book. It's not a matter to look up in some pothi. And so go to your doctor. Does this meat, is it required for your body? No, then don't take it. If it is required, take it. And on this Manusmriti, it is hilarious what Manusmriti prescribes. That, you see, they say that if you, firstly, it's not just the Brahmin who holds the yajna. It is the Brahmin who comes. He has to be fed particular types of meat. You want your ancestors to be not hungry for 7 days, then you should give this kind of meat. You want them to be not hungry for 1 month, then you must give them this kind of meat, this kind of fish. If you want them to be eternally satiated, then you must give them this kind of meat. And the Brahmin who does not serve, and the Brahmin who does not eat it as the priest, they are both violating our religion and will be born as dogs and for 7 gems.
I mean,
So all this is prescribed by Banu, and
so I was obviously
Savarkar uses these.
I was shaking my head when I was reading this book, and I'm just looking down while you're speaking. Forgive me for that, because I just want to quote exact lines with page numbers, because yes, it is unbelievable. When we talk about rationalist Savarkar, and of course we'll get to his politics and his rantings and ravings in just a bit, but when we talk about the rationalist Savarkar, uh, him saying this so many years ago, chanting did not save Somnath temple. Why will it bring universal peace when we are stricken by plague? Our Hindu, Musalman, Sanskriti, old as Devas thought it was, resorted to vows, yagnas, turning rosaries, importing deity, sacrificing goats, killing chicken, wearing amulets, Qurbani, Nawaz, prayers. None of this worked. In Europe, they invented and deployed a vaccination. They cleaned their cities and houses. They killed off the rats. We float boats by breaking a coconut and chanting mantras. But when that boat develops a hole, no mantra, no shloka from Gita or ayat from the Quran or verse from the Bible, no taweez is going to save the boatman. This is, I mean, it doesn't get more rationalist than this.
Yes, and also that the people who are now surprised at that Savarkar said all this and that he said it so directly is because they are not acquainted with the directness with which he used to write and speak. I'd give you an instance. You see this Brahmin business of imbibing the meat that is served in the Shraddh. They are like letter boxes that you have to put meat into their mouth, it will go into their stomach, and therefrom it will reach your ancestors of seven generations previously. So, and similarly, on this cow, he said, the directness with which he speaks, he said, you started by making it your mother, but you have made it your super mother. Because you're not only drinking its urine, you are drinking panchgavya, 5 things from it, including its excreta, dung, cow dung. So, do you drink the urine of your mother? Or do you eat the excreta of your mother? No. But of the super mother?
Point.
So, it is, you see, he drives it home. And when the people got upset with his one of his articles like this, and they said it should be banned and the magazine should be seized, here they said our religious sentiments have been hurt. He's what do you call maligning our religion. He said, no, I'm not maligning it.
Thankfully, they did not have UAP at that point of time. Otherwise, वो भी लग जाता. But anyways, हाँ.
तो वो कहता है कि I am not maligning it. By such beliefs and practices, you are downgrading such a wonderful heritage that we have. And then they said, no, but it should be banned. Your article should be this, and the magazine should be seized. He then wrote, he said, really? Not at all. I will keep writing on this very subject for 1 full year now. And he kept writing.
So I do see that there is this rationalism, and when you are a rationalist, obviously you'll speak against the caste system also, and he's of course he's worked against the caste system. You've written about the Patita Pavan temple, how he envisaged a temple where there would be rituals, mantras, but in residence alongside with the temple would be one Brahman, one Kshatriya, one Vaishya, one from the untouchable classes representing, and of course one representative of the Seth who's building the temple. The temple was indeed built, the functions were conducted. But I'm just trying to understand the purpose behind the man. Why was he asking for all the classes to come together? Why was he asking Hindus to be united? Was it the whole point of Ek Hai To Safe Hai? Was he trying to unite Hindus even at that point of time against the Muslim threat?
No, that is certainly that must have been one of the factors. But he genuinely believed that the caste system and what he called the Rakshas and untouchability, which he said was the Rakshasi of our religion and of our way of life, that these had been they had been millstones around our country. And caste divisions and the search for purity, all this had meant that we would not collaborate with each other even when there were cataclysmic landslides on us. So that is part of being united, but it's also a part of being together for living as good human beings and neighbors.
Okay.
And he was as stern in regard to the high caste Hindus as to, let us say, the Mahars in Maharashtra. He said, you people are treating other untouchable castes below you with the same way. You do not eat with them, they cannot touch you, you will not drink the water, they must have separate wells, etc. So he was stern with everyone for following these practices. So the effort is so great in his case, and he is prepared to suffer such unpopularity for this, and his writing is so consistent that I don't think there is any ulterior motive. He really felt that these are civilizational flaws in our tradition and they should be remedied. Yes, one of the products will be that the Hindus will come together.
I noticed that you've titled the book as Savarkar and Facts. You have not mentioned Veer. This is going to get you into trouble, I must say. And then therefore let's come to the Veer point, the literal elephant in the book, one of the most discussed point. If you have quoted him, if there are so many annotations, you've read up all his work. Arun Shourie, can you please tell us exactly, can we close at least one debate about this whole life of barrister Savarkar and this and who gave him the upadhi of Veer? Was it he himself? What is the certainty? What is the data that we have on that now?
I don't know who gave him the title, frankly, and I didn't bother to do this because it's for me an irrelevant thing. And we have to just look at the record. He is a person who is always not instigating or inspiring, if you like, others to violence.
Yes.
But when the violence occurs, he is not on the spot. Or he is standing by, far away. He does not, do the thing. A good example would be the killing of a man called Sir Curzon Wiley in 1909 in London. Curzon Wiley was the ADC to the Secretary of State for India, and a function was organized by the Indians, and his understudy, a person called Madan Lal Dhingra, then shot Curzon Wiley at point blank range. This was a great revolutionary act. Not Savarkar. He instigated, or he inspired somebody else. Similarly, he is ultimately convicted for smuggling pistols into India from Europe. And one of those pistols is used to kill a man called A.M.T. Jackson. He was actually known as Pandit Jackson because he loved Sanskrit so much and was so, such a scholar of Sanskrit and loved our religion and tradition and literary heritage so much. He was a magistrate in Nasik. He was shot. Now, again, Savarkar is not on the spot. Of course, Godse and Apte were his bhakts. He financed their magazines in which poison was poured. It's unimaginable. Then one of the magazines, Agrani, was, asked to pay 6,000 rupees, and Savarkar issued a very moving appeal to all people in Maharashtra to contribute to this. And a substitute magazine by the same persons. Godse is the editor, Apte is the manager and proprietor in name. Again, pours venom on Gandhiji and everybody, and focused hatred. But when Gandhiji is assassinated, Savarkar is not there. And in his written statement, he sort of distances himself from these two.
And says, Gandhi is my friend.
That is, of course, something to be really examined.
Okay, we'll come to that.
Yes.
Him not being at the forefront.
No, sorry, just one more example. For instance, in Andamans, this was a complaint of other revolutionaries who were incarcerated in Andamans.
Yes.
That when a strike took place, one of the great revolutionaries there, a man called Trilokanath Chatterjee, he writes in his memoir that Savarkar brothers would encourage us to go on strike, but when we started the strike, they would not join. And he says they had become favorites of the jailers, and did not want to lose the small privileges that they had got. Now, living in that cellular jail was terrible. So you can imagine people doing all sorts of things. But this is a trait which that Trilokanath has pointed out, and it is borne out. So when you say Veer, we should contrast him with Bhagat Singh. If you contrast the petitions that he wrote, not just the mercy petitions, but the correspondence which I have then, because of the help of my good friend Sanjay Suri in London, that we have reproduced here, you will see the 2.5 year correspondence. Consistently, he is pleading with Linlithgow. Now, and you contrast that with Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh also writes a letter to the governor of Punjab. What does he say in that? He says, by the way your lawyers have argued in the court, your officers have argued in the court, we are at war with the British Empire and against the King Emperor. Therefore, we are prisoners of war. And as such, we are entitled to be shot to death by a military squad. So please ensure that we are shot to death and not hanged. That's something.
So I get this whole trait, whether be it in Andamans, whether be it, and of course we'll come to later his interactions, and of course the trying to justify all of this is part of some grand strategy that he's trying to maintain, so that there is one flank that is attacking and the one flank that is keeping the conversation going. But did he think of himself as a bigger man than he was? Because one particularly worrying, this is not even a political thing, but I found it gnawed on me, is how can a man go ahead and write something like this about him being in jail, and the others are so subservient and so reverent to him that they are fighting over washing Veer Savarkar's clothes, to which he writes that I didn't want this. I tried many times to stop them. I washed their clothes without their knowledge, which, when they learnt, gave them exceeding pain. They literally went down on their knees and besought me from refraining from it. When I realized that my not allowing them to do my work and my doing their work on the sly both harassed their mind, I thought it better to let them do what they liked. Who writes stuff like this? That they are doing my kacha banyan and let them do it because that is... How was he so reverent? What did he do that brought him so much of love and respect in Andaman?
But actually, see, what happens is that he's throughout like this, not just in Andamans. When he goes to London, he says that nobody since 1857 has inspired them with this, with the way he himself inspires them, with the great goal. When he's brought for the trial, the whole court's agog with looking at Savarkar. When he's put in the train, the Britishers come and show their respect to him, and one person doffs his hat, and so on. And when he is in the ship, then the British soldiers there who are guarding the prisoners being taken to the Andaman, they say, "No, we must give you special food." When he arrives there, people say, "Oh, the Savarkar has come." And then there is the reverence of all these. So it is and it is not just at this stage. If you read his autobiography, he is writing about this when he is a boy of 7 or 8. He is the leader in the school. At 13, he is inspiring other people. At 15, he has become responsible. No, everybody's learning comes to depend upon him. He goes to villages and the villages are transformed. Mere contact with him or association with him for a short time makes people change their lives. This is not written by Akash and Arun or anybody. It is written by him, about himself. So actually, I list these things and show in this that this was one of the problems as to why that great rationalist who we were just now talking about then goes off the rails completely in other aspects of his life. Because he had such a high opinion of himself, the disappointment became even greater, and that congealed into hatred.
So,
if I may just say something that my father had taught me when I was a child, when we used to go for a walk together. Sarkash hai wo darakht, jin par samar nahi. The eucalyptus, the trees that are tall and looking up and so on, like the eucalyptus, have no fruit on them. Sarkash hai wo darakht, jin par samar nahi. Pur samar hai jo darakht, and those trees that are laden with fruit, like the mango in summer, uthate wo sar nahi. We must be humble.
Well, that's definitely not happening here. Makes me think that he would have done exceedingly well in today's politics, given the fact that he could hype up so much and he could do so much of Fekogiri. But, this is innocent compared to what he was trying to position himself as part of the freedom movement. I mean, this part I didn't know, I mean, really, really shocked me about him talking about the fact that he is the one who's behind all the revolutionary activities, that he was the one who lit the fuse of revolt, Ajit Singh in Italy, Rash Bihari in Japan, acting on my counsel and information. मेरी सूचना पर अमल करते हुए सुभाष चंद्र बोस escaped from Bharat, went to Germany after the Herculean efforts in the army of 60,000 armed revolutionaries seasoned in war, roared in Singapore, war cry, Chalo Dilli. So, Chalo Dilli, Bose escaping, foundation of the Indian National Army is all of Savarkar's doing. We haven't given the man his due.
Yes, but it isn't his doing. Because you see that there's only one meeting, and he gives 3 lectures of that about that much later in Pune when he's winding up his organization Abhinav Bharat. In that he gives all this, that he is the one who in effect gave a complete blueprint to Netaji, and Netaji acting according to that did all this. But the fact of the matter is, Netaji himself has described that meeting. Savarkar says he came to meet me on the telling of Jinnah. Go and meet Savarkar. Who are you? You don't represent the Hindus. If Savarkar talks to me, then I can see that yes, the Hindus want to talk to me. Savarkar says. Netaji describes that meeting in just 4 or 5 lines in his book called The Indian Struggle. See, Netaji had to resign as the president of the Congress party, but he was continuing the work of uniting the Hindus and Muslims against the British. So he goes to Gandhiji, he goes to Panditji, he goes to Sardar Patel, all of whom have maneuvered to get him out. He goes to Jinnah. He goes into Savarkar also because there's this small Hindu Mahasabha. But he writes in that thing that Jinnah was interested only in his Pakistan, even though Netaji told him that when we get freedom for United India, you will be the first Prime Minister. Netaji says that. Not Congress people. It's in Netaji's own book that I told him.
Okay.
And second, that then he goes to Savarkar. He said that Savarkar is only interested in getting some things for his own community or his own circle. And therefore, I came to the conclusion that nothing is to be gained by either from the Muslim League or from the Hindu Mahasabha in this quest. And he abandons the whole thing. That's all. And if you look at the facts, the formation of the Free India Legion in Germany predates this meeting many years. That was a small little group set up from POWs that Germany had. And Hitler said this is a joke. He did not allow them anything. He gave some vehicles, he gave them 700 horses to fight the cannons and tanks. Then when Netaji goes to Germany, it takes him 1 year to get an appointment with Hitler. And what does Hitler do? After the photo opportunity, he sends him into and says, "Hey, go to Japan in a submarine." Now, Netaji goes to Japan in 1943. The formation of the INA has started in 1941. And the main person in that was a Japanese major and Gyani Pritam Singh and one other Captain Mohan Singh. Netaji is not there. Ultimately, they all appeal to Netaji. We have tried to collect this little force. You take leadership. And naturally, Netaji is the one who gives great fire and great into that. And then Savarkar didn't just stop at that. He said, I would have, in the meantime, inflamed Indians in India.
Yeah.
And I would have packed the army with my soldiers, Hindu soldiers. So what will happen is that when the British Indian army meets the INS soldiers, the British Indian soldiers will refuse to fire and will instead fire on the British. Didn't happen. And they will desert and join the INA. Actually, there were no desertions. And actually, the British Indian soldiers came down with the same hammer on the INA soldiers as they did against the Japanese. So nothing is there.
So,
but the modern Bhakts are saying, if this meeting had not taken place, the course of Indian history would have been pata nahi kya.
So there is obviously one trait that I found out is after researching and after reading up all the material and trying to put it with factual history, there is a lot of myth making, and you write it also. Savarkar created myths. Of course, that's part of the problem. So many just to go by that he wrote about himself and events of which he was at the center. But the sheer number of myths as well as conviction with which he promoted them point to something more, that he believed on those myths that he put out. Acolytes and devotees, and now those capitalizing on his name have, of course, further inflated them. There is a lima in that. The more inflated the myth, the more the creators are apprehensive that they would be found out, hence their utter touchiness. When you have to just ask the slightest of question about fabrication, they will fly into a rage. Anti-Hindu, anti-national, perverse, prejudice. इसमें सोरोस भी हम लगा देते हैं. So, in this whole myth making, what is it that Savarkar wants to gain? Is it because you see his acolytes will say, but at the end of the day, he was fighting for the nation? Maybe his way was a little different. Was he fighting for Bharat, or was he looking for position for himself? How does history judge him now on this after so many years?
I do not know how history will judge him, but the fact is that these people are then able to conflate fighting, promoting themselves with fighting for the country, with the greater cause. They become the great cause. And that is where the problem arises. In the Hitler is Germany, Germany is Hitler, Indira is India, India is Indira. Similarly, the present leaders, they start thinking of themselves as the whole country. And from that, many other problems arise. But I think in Savarkar's case, it was because of that very inflated image about himself as the heir to the Lokmanya Tilak. And then this outsider comes, this Gujarati comes and then steals the prize. Just as the Marathas were the heir to the British, to the Mughal Empire, and this outsider British came and took away.
True.
But in writing all these things, you must remember that he writes in one place that as a sportsman about British, I will give them the credit for this, that, and the other. So he's very harsh on everybody, but not British.
That
even after he has been released.
Yes. So we'll of course talk about that before imprisonment and after imprisonment. But let's talk about first the imprisonment also. First, of course, him trying to escape, his great escape at Marseille from the pothole of the ship, and him battling waves and trying to escape. What really happened?
You see, that I told you about this man Jackson, who was killed, and the smuggling of the pistols were traced to Savarkar. So Savarkar was arrested in January 1910. And he's put on a ship, SS Moria, to be brought back to Bombay for trial. This is a steamship. कोयला डाला जाता है, steam से चलती है. So it stops in Marseille, in France, at the port, for coaling, as they say, for putting coal in it. Now the myth is that while this ship was there, Savarkar jumps out of the porthole. He says to the two policemen who have been asked to guard him, I have to go to the toilet. So he goes to the toilet, and there is a porthole, and he jumps out of that, and then he battles the stormy seas and the great waves and this, that, and the other. And you can hear Mr. Bajpayee on YouTube on this. Everybody believes this because he sowed that myth. But the fact of the matter is that the ship was docked, and the distance between the ship and the shore with the quay was how much? 10 to 12 feet. There could not be any stormy seas. Then what happens is he jumps and he runs. And a French soldier, a French policeman, there's people are shouting, catch him, catch him. He thinks there's some thief who has stolen something or done something else that is wrong. He tries to hold him. The two sepoys also come down. They run after him, and then he's caught and brought up back. Now, if he battled the stormy seas, those two policemen had not. Nobody has till today said that even their knickers had been wet.
Mr. Shourie,
Exactly.
don't get into the maths. You don't know this. Don't get into the maths. This is the new formula. Why are you getting into the maths? Why?
Uh-huh. Therefore, no, but the interesting thing is, I'm not getting into it. You see, the British were upset. We have sent these two officers and two policemen to guard this fellow. How did he jump out of the port? So an inquiry is established at once. The inquiry report gives all these details, 10 to 12 feet and so on. And that inquiry report is not published by Soros. It's published by the government of Bombay. Government of Bombay in 1956. It's available on the library shelves of the Central Secretariat.
So,
But we just don't see.
so,
And
so,
we continue to.
so that is, of course, one myth which you are saying is that if you read the records of the Bombay government, you'll get it. The other one, of course, is this hugely debated and contested part about mercy petitions and how mercy petitions was actually a strategy. It was a detailed ploy so that he could then get out and work, and because he didn't believe in the fact of rotting in jail, and he would have liked to work for freedom. Even if I'm going to accept all of this at face value, the fact that is missed out often is that his first mercy petition goes in 2 months. So he
months.
has made this whole plan to get out and work for the nation in 2 months.
Right. And not only that, if you see the writings that he has, and when somebody, Sarjaduna Sarkar, the great historian, he wrote something about the letters that Shivaji wrote to Aurangzeb. Whenever Shivaji was in a tight spot, Shivaji will write some letter to Aurangzeb. I will help you conquer the south. I will do this for you. I will do that for you. And the moment that thing was over, so Savarkar is actually writing about his petition and saying that these fools who don't even know this, that, and the other, they criticize Shivaji. They don't understand Shivaji's strategy. This is what it is, as if he's writing about a guilt about his mercy petitions, which by that time have not come out as yet. If Savarkar was so confident about the motives that have led him to these mercy petitions, he wrote very copiously about his time in the Andamans. This, my Transportation for Life, is a very thick book, thicker than mine. But he does not mention the mercy petitions. So he's subconsciously a bit, embarrassed about them. Now, that is one point. You see, the tests are two, as given by Savarkar himself. So yes, Shivaji used to write those letters. But the moment that he got out of the clutches, he will start doing all the things again. So what happens in Savarkar's case? The moment he comes out, after pledging that I shall now be very politically useful to you, I am the prodigal son, and only the great to the mighty can be munificent and generous. After all that, he then lives up to his commitments to the British. He's not Shivaji in that sense. So that is a point to remember. The second thing is, he says that the test is whether the adversary is fooled or not. The British were certainly not fooled. They saw through him and they made him do things. And in the final conversations, you see, he has now been brought back from Andamans. He is in Pune. And the British officers meet him on behalf of the governor. And they say that now we have to release you, we have to confine you to one district. He said, yes, he has always said that if you confine me and say I should not do any political work, I will agree to that. My brother will also agree to it. And then one of them says that, there's also this question of your trial. Because the whole allegation was that the trial was unfair. So Savarkar said, no, it was fair. I'll write it. I agree to writing this. So this is not a condition we are asking for your release. But he still writes it, that my trial was fair. And when all this becomes
He was
known,
being extra safe. You're not understanding. He was being extra safe.
But they made Akash, it is not that many samajh raha. His own small circle in Pune, the people Paranjpe and others, when they got to know this, that this is what he has agreed to, they were very upset. And they said, okay, let him rest for 6 months, and after this we must get these things removed, these conditions. So, unfortunately, there is this is one part of it. And the second part is that you have to contrast this with the conduct of Bhagat Singh, what he writes,
Yes.
the conduct even of the understudy of Savarkar, Madan Lal Dhingra, his statement at the trial.
Another
That, yes,
very less mentioned fact I know, because when we were making an episode on Bhagat Singh, is that, well, there was a mercy petition for Bhagat Singh also that was written by his father, and Bhagat Singh really lost it.
got upset. Yes,
Yeah. So in your chapter, A Revolutionary Writes, I mean, it opens with this: "I'm ready to serve the government in any capacity if they like, for as my conversion is conscious, so that I have my future conduct would be by keeping me in jail. Nothing can be got in comparison to what would be otherwise. The mighty alone can afford to be merciful, and therefore, where else can the prodigal son return but to the parental doors of the government? Hoping your honor would kindly take into notion all these points." What I wanted to know from you is that this whole point of him doing this to get away, and this whole Shivaji analogy also, he continues to grovel in front of the British. Linlithgow is on record saying that Savarkar used to beg in front of him. What I want to understand is then, how is it that Savarkar became a different person pre-Andaman and post-Andaman? Noticeably, of course, his hatred for Muslims. What happened in Andaman that fired him so much from what he used to be to what he became? Was it only political, or did he really have a personal experience that made him so bitter?
See, the general explanation that is given about Muslims, because for instance, in 1906 to 1908, he writes this book, India's First Struggle for Independence. It's about 1857,
yes,
in which he says Hindus and Muslims work together and this, that, and the other. Just because at some stage we were enemies does not mean that we should not be enemies forever. We should be enemies forever, etc. But after Andamans, he picks on this thing. He defines Hindutva in such a way as to exclude the Muslims. Exclude, of course, smaller groups like Parsis and Christians and Jews, etc., but Muslims mainly. That's the point Ambedkar made against him, and said he's doing exactly what Jinnah is saying. But it is said that he did this because of the extreme cruelty of the Muslim guards. Now, that doesn't stand scrutiny. See, firstly, the Muslim guards were all acting for a man called Berry, who was the real terror. He was the controller of the jail. He was an Irishman. This fellow does not get any hatred. Savarkar does not develop any hatred for the Irish. The British have put him in there. He does not develop any hatred for the British. And then he himself says that the Pathans are very cruel. The Pathan Muslims, but not Pathan and Baloch, but not the Punjabis Muslims. But he does not differentiate the Muslims later on. So it doesn't stand scrutiny that it was only because of experiences of cruelty in Andamans. Because after all, the persons who were really cruel were the persons who had put this, so many freedom fighters, etc., in there. The conditions were terrible. 3 persons committing suicide every month. Suicide. And 400-500 people being hanged. So it doesn't. But he does not develop any hatred to the British. On the contrary, when he writes about them, he says, "I will write with sportsman-like fairness," and compliments them for being much more advanced in the matters of statecraft and so on than us. So it was, I think it is the same explanation, Akash, as the explanation for Jinnah. See, just go for a minute, so as not to... Then the Bhakts may also see the point. As you know, Jinnah was a member of the Congress party. And he was regarded as a champion of Hindu-Muslim unity. But then he feels marginalized, and he actually goes away to England to settle down there, because he said, I have no future in India. The Muslim League is wiped out in 1937 in the elections, completely wiped out. In the Muslim seats, the Congress people win. The Muslim leaders Muslim thinkers or students in England tell Jinnah, you are a big man, go back, man. lead the Muslims. And Jinnah realizes the only way he can become a national leader is by an extremist Muslim position. That's when he says nothing but partition. Now, in the case of Savarkar, what is happening when he comes out of the jail, in cellular jail, is Gandhi has suddenly come in 1915-16.
Yeah.
And suddenly he is becoming, Lokmanya has died in 1920, and Gandhi has become the de facto leader of the Congress. Now, how to differentiate your position from Gandhi's position? So, violence, anti-Muslim, two nations, irreconcilable, exact opposite of Gandhi's position. So I feel, if we were to be generous and not say, come to the conclusion that it is at the asking of the British that he is doing this, then this could be one possible explanation. There is another explanation that the Muslim leadership at that time was given one concession after the other. There's a famous Muslim League and Tilak Pact. Concessions are given on behalf of the Congress, one after the other. But they keep demanding more, whether it is Urdu or anything. And the person who's listed all this is actually Dr. Ambedkar in his book, The Case for Pakistan or the Partition of India. He lists. So one can say that he saw that the Muslim leadership would not agree to any compromise, and these foolish congressmen are following, trying to appease them, and therefore he became this way. But that does not stand scrutiny because of the way he defines, as you said, Hinduism and Hindutva, etc. That is a fundamental thing that he is saying, much more fundamental than merely the politics of the moment.
Okay. So let's come to life after he's released. And one would have expected, if the Shivaji angle was to be followed, that he would have escaped, he would have gone underground, he would have carried on his activities in a revolutionary manner. That's definitely not what is happening. He's regularly conducting himself, trying to seek favors, speaking to the British, always trying to seek access to the Viceroy. I'm quoting page 171. Savarkar meets Viceroy Linlithgow on the 5th of July 1940. Linlithgow cables a detailed account of what transpired to the Secretary of State in London. What Savarkar said in private to the Viceroy and his demeanor were very different from the uncompromising tone that he adopted in public. Mahasabha was quite content with dominion status since they recognized that nothing else was practical. Government should set a time limit a year after cessation of the war. If Indians could not agree on the constitutional provisions, he recognized that His Majesty's government must come in and settle this issue, but he begged that we should not rub in if we decide to say anything, that agreement between Hindus and Muslims was essential as a preliminary, as it would upset everything. Savarkar then added something that would have surprised Linlithgow. He and his friends were uncertain whether His Majesty's government were to drop out of control of this country and it would be possible to get through without a civil war. Something that the British would love to hear, that here is a leader telling them that no, आप हमें dominion दे दो, आप हमें पूर्ण स्वराज मत दो, आप अगर चले गए, then we might have a civil war. Why is he playing this game? What is he trying to do here? He's telling the British not to go.
Yes, and Linlithgow is surprised. You see, please see that you were saying this meeting takes place in 1940. Right. What has happened in 1939? World War has broken out. And the Congress ministries, in my small view, wrongly, or the academic point, they resign from all the ministries which they have conquered, the states, provinces which they have conquered. They resign. The British now are trying to find persons whom they can put in place. Some Indians. So Subhash Chandra Bose also says they, create people when they need them, create leaders when they need them, and for that reason. And Savarkar sees an opportunity in this because his party has been wiped out in the elections. 1,540 seats, he gets only 3. But here's a vacancy. So he's trying to tell the British, no, we can collaborate. I can do this, I can do that. My people will be more competent than these Congress persons. We should unite and finish these Congress people. And he's telling the others that I have to finish the Congress because the Congress does not represent the interests of the Hindus.
So I just want to read again what he has written to the Viceroy again, letter dated 21st of August 1940, about Hindu Mahasabha. I may, in general way, foretell this much after your announcement. The Hindu Mahasabha party will in all probabilities meet your Excellency's wishes, but some explanations and one or two additions are generously made by your Excellency to what you have already said. And with the Hindu Mahasabha party, I hope I shall be able to pull up a number of important parties in the land, trying our level best to push on the war effort so as to that they are directly connected with the question of Indian defense. So here he is saying is that I scratch your back, you scratch mine, give me some more prominence and I will get you soldiers. How does this play with the public in general? I mean, were these letters so secret? I mean, did the public at that point of time not know what he was trying to conspire or cozy up to the British?
No, first thing is that the letters, of course, were confidential, and I have not read all the books about Savarkar, but I'm not sure that the letters have been put in print the way they've been put in print in this way. And here, my entire debt is to my friend Sanjay Suri, that he was our chief reporter in the Indian Express when we worked together, and he's the one who, on a small hint, would be able to find out which, get into the archives in Britain and excavate them. And that is why I have reproduced those letters at great length. Even though they repeat themselves, I keep so that people should not say, oh, he's quoting out of context or he's picking up something or the other. Now, what you are saying is actually very important. You see, what he is now aiming for is one step after the other. And the Linlithgow is a very clever man. I mean, he and Reginald Maxwell, the Home Member, and Sir Richard, they are able to, finish the Quit India movement also. So they're very clever. So they keep seeing how much more this fellow will give. So first he gives up complete independence, says dominion status will do. Then he says dominion status after the war. First it was announce it now. Then it was after the war. Then it was any reasonable period after the war. Then it was that in any case, what is the use of asking? You see, then the public gets very enraged. His own supporters. And his ultimate thing is that no, what is the use? Even if I had got them to pledge something or the other, what is the use of assurances? Do these great powers live by their assurances? So, on your point, firstly, yes, he keeps making concessions, and Linlithgow and others are also surprised as to what he is prepared to now agree to. On the other hand, the people, when they get to know even little bits, for instance, on his war effort, on his just asking for dominion status and so on, these are things he has to say in the meetings of the Hindu Mahasabha. Then they get very upset. And he says, no, you should rely on me. You see, we will outdo them in cunning. So this shows that the public reaction to him was not good. And that is borne out by the complete wipeout of the Hindu Mahasabha, again, in spite of his tours and his pleading in the 1945-46 elections. People remember what he has done in the previous years.
I want to read here what Bose writes. I hope that Savarkar Bhakts would respect Bose at least. Talking of parties like Muslim League and Hindu Mahasabha, Bose writes, besides the above political parties comprising members of all communities, there are communal organizations whose avowed object is to secure loaves and fishes for members of their own community. Repeating this characterization in a paragraph later, he remarked, and I'm quoting Bose now, while the political parties that we first dealt with have political programs and carry out some sort of agitation against or opposition towards the government, the communal parties are more concerned with dividing amongst themselves, such as of the crumbs that are thrown at them from official tables, in accordance with the time-worn policy of divide and rule. The British greatly encourages these parties just to spite the Indian National Congress and try to weaken its influence. It was clearly exhibited in the 1930s. Later, Indian representatives to the Round Table Conference were not selected by a vote of the Indian people but were nominated by the British government, and making these nominations, the communal parties who have no concern with the fight for political freedom were given exaggerated importance. I mean, Bose just writes divide and rule, and he understands it so well.
Yes, of course. It's a remarkable passage, including about individuals who were picked up, and he names them. And remember, this is Subhash Chandra Bose writing when he has actually, in effect, been thrown out of the Congress, and he's now in Europe, and yet he has this objectivity and mental integrity to write the truth. And on the other hand, if you see what is happening throughout the period of 2.5 years, what is Savarkar pleading for? Not dominion status and up this, that, or the other. No, he's wanting some posts for his men in the Viceroy's Executive Council, that is in the cabinet, and in the military committee, this military council, a war council. Just some posts. The British that is why the British lose respect for him for 2 reasons. 3 reasons. One, they say that in public he's saying one thing, and in private he tells us something else. And the secretary to the Viceroy writes to him, and the Viceroy himself writes to him that you see, the British government has to go by what you say in public, not these private assurances that you give me. Second thing that happens is, on posts, the British eventually decide that we can't go along, we can't give him anything, and the whole project is abandoned after holding the carrot to him a few times. The worst part of it, that this demoralizes him so much, because now the people, including the Hindus, in particular the Hindus, are rejecting him in elections. And on the other side, the British, from whom he thought this would happen, that would happen, they reject him and throw him out. And to just ask for some posts. And there was a very small thing. You will notice that in 2 or 3 of those letters, he says, yes, he says, sir, you can appoint anybody. Actually, I can send you a list and you select anybody. I will accept them. But just one small thing. Just before announcing that, please let me know which are the names you are selecting. So that you see, then it's like I have appointed them, or I have appointed them, selected them from my group, that these will be the fellows in the Viceroy Council. I found that to be very, that somehow people should see that it is my thing. But you please, Akash, आप ही कर लो जो करना है, मगर मुझे पहले 2 मिनट बता देना. मैं कहूँगा आज आकाश का ये प्रोग्राम है, तो लोग कहेंगे जी ये आकाश को इन्फ्लुएंस करता है. So I've lost sound.
Sorry. So, as a student of history, I find it hard to believe that an entire edifice is built, and I'm willing to take that argument that he wrote those letters as a part of strategy. Shivaji, Promax. But are you saying that so many letters, so many correspondence, such a long life after also, I mean, he had a life after coming out of Andaman, there is no aggression, there is no strategy, there is no achievement against the British? There is nothing? Are you saying, or you're hiding something? Tell us.
No, I don't. Why should I hide anything? It will be wonderful to know that. And it is true that the national movement, the independence was got by many factors working together, including, for instance, Hitler breaking the back of the British, even though the British win and the Allies win, but the British back is broken. They can't hold on to India. It's a very expensive thing to hold on to India. The mutiny by the naval officers, naval ranks in Bombay. So many factors would have worked together. But I can't find the contribution of Savarkar in that. And the British don't seem to pay much attention to him after these exchanges. Then they just... then Lilithgow stops responding to him. It is then his secretary. अबे तुम लिख दो उसको कि मैंने पहले ही जवाब दे दिए.
So, I mean, I'm just asking you to don your political hat for a second here before we jump back into the book. But doesn't it strike a little odd that it's not like Congress did not have a Hindutva opposition even then? And are you saying that for all the efforts that he did, his entire life's work to split the Hindu vote, to split the Hindu bank from the Congress, it seems it backfired and the Congress continued to have that entire chunk. I mean, Congress was a Hindu party. How did that happen and why does it fail at this point of time?
No, firstly, at that time, it's not the Hindus who are with the Congress alone. It's the country as a whole. They are the national movement.
Yeah.
Now the Congress is a political party. And you see, if you look at, if you are just talking current politics, you look at Punjab. Did the Akalis, the Akalis became a Sikh party. And Gyani Zail Singh, and it is said Sanjay Gandhi, then put up Bhindranwale to counter the Akalis.
Yes.
But the Sikhs go to Bhindranwale, they don't come to the Congress. And that becomes a problem. And then Bhindranwale has to be killed and all sorts of things happen. So these calculations don't work out that way. One should not be too clever in this way. And the Congress at that time was, though Gandhiji, it's a very important point, Akash. Gandhiji's persona is regarded as Hindu. His being is regarded as personifying all the best that is in Hinduism. And he is sincerely that. Savarkar is posing to be the great Hindu leader, championing, but people don't gravitate to him.
Okay. So
They
take us through.
see.
Take us through the last years of Savarkar then. So what happens to Savarkar in the evening of his life? He sees that all his work that he has done, all that he has written, the Congress is the dominant party and power, and he's largely discredited.
That climaxes in the fact that he then becomes one of the accused in the assassination of Gandhiji. See, by the time India becomes independent, he's already a marginalized figure, and all that he can do is issue press statements. But he is very upset. You see, he's always, in 1945-46, he's appealing to the Hindus, do not cast a single vote for the Congress. Cast them for me. Because, not only assembly elections, these are the people from whom the Constituent Assembly will be formed. And we must be there. Then alone the Hindu interests can be saved. But the Hindus do not do anything for him. They don't vote for him. And therefore, what does he do? When the Constituent Assembly frames the Constitution, he says, this Constitution is an illegitimate Constituent Assembly. And therefore, we will not accept the Constitution. National flag. They've adopted the national flag. The only thing he says, the chakra is there because of his advice to one committee of the Constituent Assembly. But the rest, we are not going to accept this. This national flag will never be the flag of the Hindu Rashtra, etc. So national language will not be the way the Constitution envisages it. He is now repudiating whatever is being done after independence. But again, nobody is listening.
Acha, so many letters you have read, so many books you have read. Acha, he would have said something against the British after the British went away.
No, not at all. I could not find.
What?
Actually, I'm sorry. You see, his last book is a thing called Six Glorious Epochs of Indian History, which is now his. It's the last book he writes, and at that time he says, "I've crossed 80. I'm confined to bed very often, and therefore I cannot research this particular thing or give you the sources, but look up my previous books, etc." But there's nothing about the British. You see, and yes, you can say that he's talking only of 6 glorious epochs when the Hindus ruled. And therefore, why should he talk of the British period? But he's very generous to the British. And
I wouldn't be generous to the people who would have sent me to Andaman. I'm just...
No, not only the question of being generous. Maybe he's very, objective about the British, about their political skill and so on. And I can't think of that he is at that time, even after, in retrospect, writing anything lately, vigorous.
And I guess the bitterness also would come from the numbers. I mean, you've quoted also 1945 election, Central Legislative Assembly, the Mahasabha gets only 3.6% of the votes, as against around 60% of the Congress, 28% of the Muslim League. It gets no seat at all. Even in the non-Mohammedan votes cast, it only gets 5.9%. The Congress gets 91.5%. So very clearly, it was a wipeout. Why did this happen? Why did the wipeout happen? Why did he not resonate with the people?
I think firstly this appeal to Hindutva, it was because he was not appealing to Hinduism but to Hindutva, which was in his formulation a completely divisive entity or idea. Second, that his record during the independence struggle was before everybody. You must imagine, we are now 70 years after that. But at that time, what was the big thing? The big thing was the national movement and India getting freedom. It was the all-consuming, the single idea, the single emotion.
See, this is what happens when you're not linked to social media. I know you're not on social media, but you don't know that Indian independence happened in 2014, according to Kangana Ranawat. You don't follow these things. No, that is the problem, sir. You're too much limited to academia. But
yes,
but Savarkar, this point about Savarkar is the most fascinating for me. I mean, for Bhakts, my alter ego Bhakt Banerjee, his mind would be blown away. Savarkar went to great lengths to distinguish between Hindutva and Hinduism. Indeed, the very values that have been taught since childhood are the essential attributes of Hinduism. He decried it as the values that must be jettisoned. He called them perverse, perverted, imbecile, suicidal, foolish, ridiculous. He's saying all of this to our Hinduism. And
yes. And actually, he says too that these were perverted values of what is good. For instance, tolerance. For instance, generosity. For instance, sticking to the truth. For instance, non-violence in Gandhiji's case. He says that you can't be truthful all the time. And these fellows, they
are as we see in his writings, enemies. You can't be truthful all the time.
if Prithviraj Chauhan defeats the Muslim invader, but lets him go out of generosity, and that fellow comes back again and blinds him, etc. So he says, now supposing the Muslim had done it, so you should be like the Muslim. You should be super cruel. You should be super cunning. Your revenge should be super. If they rape your women, you must rape their women. You must have a wholesale slaughter, including of women and children, because they do it. So all this is a repudiation of Hinduism. And as far as Hindutva is concerned, his definition is really laughable. I'm sorry to use the word, but that's the correct word. It's common. We are Hindus. Why? Because we have common blood. Arey, bhaiya, if I go into hospital and you have to donate blood, first they will see what is your type of blood. And what about the Muslims here? Mayo Muslims in Haryana? The same blood. So he therefore realizes that is not going to work. So he then has other criteria. You should have the same history, you should have the same heroes. Your holy land must be, this is not just your fatherland, but your holy land. That means Muslims can't be because their holy land is Arabia. Christians can't be because their holy land is
I have seen so many Savarkar Bhakts fly into rage when this point is mentioned that he did advocate rape as a weapon of war. Did he advocate rape of women as a weapon of war?
Yes, of course, but that is... Well, they certainly as a weapon of saving our civilization, much more than war. I've quoted all those passages, a few of the many passages, but all they have to do is to please read his work, which is greatly prized, called 6 Glorious Epochs in Indian History. Read, I'll give you one instance. Today, not just Savarkar, but Tipu Sultan is also being put in the limelight as one of the great villains.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens is Tipu is attacked by the British. They hide the fact that Tipu is the only person who defeated the British. And when Tipu was killed, there was a bank holiday in England in celebration of having killed this man.
I didn't know
such
that.
An effective opponent. Yes, it's written there. I've given the source also. Now, the point would be that on Savarkar's telling, Tipu's people, his scoundrels as he calls them, they rape Indian Hindu women. And Savarkar says that it's so foolish. And the Maratha people, when the Marathas defeat Tipu's scoundrels, they did not do this. So here is the proclamation that should have been issued at that time. And you please read that proclamation. It is in the 6 glorious epochs of Indian history, in which he says, if they had been brought together here, we will bring them together in such and such places, blow them up, and their women will be... All this is there. What is the... where is the mystery in this? I can't understand.
Not only...
Bhakts are just shutting their eyes.
And this whole trait of blaming others, I mean, I don't know whether it's a DNA trait that has now developed. I mean, Nehru ki galti we keep hearing, but thankfully at that point of time he didn't have Nehru to blame as much. So you have Ashoka ki galti. This was a revelation for me. Ashoka is very high on Savarkar's list of villains. According to Savarkar, in several ways, Ashoka weakened India and enabled foreigners to invade it. He abandoned war, he preached, and indeed he enforced ahimsa, deployed tyrannical force and punishments. He banned Vedic practices and thus drained the national spirit. So everybody is at fault. Where is the self-realization that we could also be at fault? No, but everybody else, never Savarkar.
Yes. Not only that, never the persons who would have subscribed to his views throughout history. So Buddha certainly is a villain because he preaches non-violence. Ashoka most certainly. Then come a few Hindu rulers who try to unite India. He applauds their assassinations assassinations by a general of the king, one of the descendants of Ashoka. All this keeps happening throughout. Then, of course, Akbar turns out to be an even greater scoundrel and even more violent than Aurangzeb. And, of course, the final villain is Gandhi, because he's also weakening India. So I think this is a frame, but we cannot say that he did not think that the Hindus were at fault, because on those perverted virtues, as he calls them, perverted virtues, the search for purity and all, that also weakened and divided India and made us and opened us up to foreigners, foreign invasions. So in that sense, Hindus were greatly at fault.
So before we wrap up, I mean, I'm just coming to the end, and when you talk about, his ideas of an India. So imagine that the British favor him, he manages to get all the votes, the Hindutva bandwagon at that point of time increases. What is the sort of India? What is the sort of India we would have had? I mean, of course, it's a wet dream of the right to see Savarkar as the father of the nation. Had Savarkar been the father of the nation, what is the sort of India we would have had today?
First point, I just want to know whether the Bhakts know who called Gandhiji the father of the nation. It's not Nehru. It's Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. In a broadcast, when he's leading the INA forces into Burma, he has a special broadcast addressed to Gandhiji. It's a most moving broadcast. He's a person who Gandhiji has in effect blocked out. And he says that, you, the father of our nation, we seek your blessings in this enterprise. That's where the father of the nation comes from. So it's not anybody else but Netaji. That's one point.
Bose cancelled. Bhakt Banerjee is cancelling him now. Yeah.
तो दूसरी चीज ये है कि सावरकर, if people follow or if a state is formed in Savarkar's on his doctrine, then it will be an Islamic state wearing saffron clothes, as an Islamic state as described and imagined by him. Super cruel, super intolerant, and so on. And Hinduism certainly would have been perverted, come out of recognition. I think it is being perverted today. Because the essential point about Hinduism is the inner directed search. And this Hindutva business, even this diluted Hindutva that we are beginning to see today, is all about exhibitionist religiosity. And it is the rationalization for the local bully. So somebody beats up a little bangle fellow selling bangles in Indore. Some chaps rape a 9-year-old girl in Jammu, Bakarwal girl. Some people have a gang rape of a pregnant lady in Ahmedabad. That is Hindutva. So that is the perversion. And that is why my book ends with this plea: save Hinduism from Hindutva. And I can only appeal to the Prime Minister, to Mohanji Bhagwat, please see the swords of evil that you are sowing. And I can only plead with the Bhakts, please read Savarkar. यही अगर यही इसी की सिर्फ किताबें हैं और किसी की नहीं है तो भाई उसकी किताबें तो पढ़ लो. And don't be surprised at the facts. And just that because somebody brings out the facts, you say, oh, this is now, as you said, Soros agent.
I mean, of course, it's a very, very interesting book for me to read. So I really enjoy. Very nice photograph in the background also. I mean, I hadn't seen this.
He's Savarkar, and that is Sir Stafford Cripps.
So
Yes.
it's a very interesting book. So this is my first read of 2025, but I can't let you go before asking you this: is that at one point of time you were also one of the leading intellectual lights of the right. So does it bother you that there was a time when you were also advocating for the right, advocating for the BJP? Do you regret that point of time now? Do you know better now?
No, I think Akash, there is a mischaracterization in that, which the person you started with saying here contradictions not only of Savarkar but of Arun Shourie. No, see, what is our job? Your job, my job. It is to pursue facts, to do a forensic audit of anything. And the facts at that time were that the Indian state was certainly bending to persons. In this case, let's take Shahabuddin, our friend Saeed Shahabuddin, on the matter of Rushdie, or the amendment bill that was brought after the Shah Bano judgment. The state was bending. Similarly, the state was bending in Punjab to Bindranwale and group, and to such fatal consequences for us Punjabis. So at that time, if I write about those things, I write about, let's say Shah Bano controversy comes up, and I write about Muslim personal law by studying the Quran, by studying the Hadith, by studying the Muslim law, personal law books of the Sharia.
Sure.
Am I being anti-Hindu? No, anti-Muslim? No, I am just writing the facts and using their texts as arguments. And so the same thing on Ram Janambhoomi at that time. So many of these so-called historians were saying, "Nee, Ram to Egypt ka kuch tha, Afghanistan mein kuch tha." So I would bring out the opposite, along with others. So is that pro or anti anybody? No, we are on the facts.
I am not even I don't think I have the right to question you on academics. I was just wondering about the politics of it. The politician Arun Shoure, does he have second thoughts about taking the political plunge?
No. I think this is a wonderful opportunity that Mr. Bajpayee gave me, and it was wonderful to work for him. And I can absolutely assure you from personal knowledge that Bajpayee would be outraged. He would vomit at the direction at which the discourse is being pushed today. No doubt on that. So this BJP does not have anything to do with the BJP of even so recent a time as Mr. Bajpayee's time. So I regret that part. Otherwise, we need parties from across the spectrum. And as far as our own work is concerned, our job only is to examine the facts, bring out the facts, report where the facts lead us, and not care about this business of, you are this, you are that, and you were first a Hindu, this thing. Actually, I remember an American lady, Nussbaum, some very big philosopher or political scientist there, saying she had come to interview me once, And she said that, but his practices are all, Buddhist meditation techniques and all. Do I spend my time reading the Buddha? So she said that this something about the Hindu, ideologue of the Hindu movement is actually a crypto-Buddhist logi. So what to do?
Okay. Last, you said that you are not on social media. We were just having a conversation about that. And so, and we are on social media, and a lot of our audience is the younger generation. Sometimes they mock me also that I should be even younger. Our core audience members, I mean, are involved in stuff like crypto and Discord, and they said you should be up to speed on that. So, to the newer generation who hasn't read you in the Indian Express, who hasn't seen you as a politician, who hasn't maybe read your books, but this is because this is so, in our language, such a trending topic. To what would you tell them, to the young generation today, who's not reading newspapers, who's completely on social media, really, really influenced by what is happening on social media and taken up very quickly by ideas?
Taken up by wind, by hawa, not by ideas. So I would plead with them, please read. Please think for yourselves. Don't go by what your peers are saying or what persons whom you don't even know, whether they are bots, whether they are persons being manipulated from somewhere else, or they do not even exist, and they are putting out some line which you then take up and run with. That is going to harm India. You see, no country can survive without institutions. Our institutions are in a state of great decay, and they've been made into instruments today. And the only way for us to retrieve the situation is through discourse. But discourse has to be informed. So if you are insisting that no, I will go by social media, by the latest thing on WhatsApp or the latest one-liner by somebody, then how will things be redeemed? We will become a Pakistan. We are on the way to becoming a Pakistan. We are on the way to being made into a Pakistan.
You don't mince your you as always, you don't mince your words. So last question then, because you have read so much of history and you've written so much about history, I want you to do a little bit of crystal ball gazing, because I see that there is a despondency setting in. Just yesterday, Telegraph published a sea voter, which is usually very happy with the government, a sea voter survey that said 37 or more percentage of Indians don't see themselves doing better under a Modi government. That 37% was last time in 2013. So it seems the clock is setting itself back. Where do you see us heading? Is it going to be more economic trouble? Is it going to be more social strife? Given your expertise and years of experience, give us a fair warning.
37% is the votes that he got in 2014 also. So we are back to the unfortunately 37% are the votes that Hitler got also. So it's bad things to remember.
Now you're gone. Now I'm also gone.
I'm not saying this. Actually, I always feel that this is a very wrong thing when people say, "Oh, Modi Hitler hai." Bilkul nahi hai. Hitler was in a different class. Hitler, Stalin, very different class. So this is the current lot. You see, Orban, Erdogan, Trump. ये इनसे देखना चाहिए कि क्या similarities हैं. So, but on the point of where we are headed, I think we are headed actually to a breakdown. Not a breakup, but a breakdown. Just things not working. Take the economy, you were saying. It's not GDP figures which are manipulated, but it's the fact that there is no investment that's taking place. The private investor is not coming up. Why is he not investing in India? He's taking his money out. Similarly, the foreign investment is not coming in because they see the reality. So it is not to be seen by just looking at the latest quarter's figures or the latest election result, which party has won. The thing to see in the economy is the working of institutions like SEBI, the working of the Enforcement Directorate. That is what will determine the way the economic structure evolves. In politics, we should see the nature of discourse, not just who's winning or which MLA is going from here to there. And what is the main point? Institutions and discourse. And these certainly are not working well. And And I would suggest to the younger generation, if it is so difficult for you emotionally to see objectively what is happening in India today, because then you say, oh, he's this or that. Please see what happened to Pakistan over the last 70 years. Just study Pakistan. That will probably you'll be able to do it more objectively. And whether they start with the Ahmadiyas, then they go to the Shias, then they go to the Sunnis, and the Sunnis set up their own little bands, and those bands acquire weapons, and those weapons are there. Those bands are then used by the state, thinking with this band we will control that band, and then the state gets divided. And in the meantime, the institutions get completely pulverized. And just see where Pakistan is today. Why don't we? It has broken. So why don't we see that? So my appeal to the younger generation is कि आप खुद अपने आप को objectively examine करना चाहिए हमेशा, और अगर वो नहीं हो सकता, अरे भैया तो फिर पाकिस्तान को ही देख लो. I'll tell you one thing, just one small point. To put it in perspective, there was a very famous economist called George Rosen, and हार्वर्ड के थे. उन्होंने 4 tigers of Asia के बारे में किताब लिखी थी 1960s when I was doing my doctorate. Edward Mason, I think his name was. So among the 4 tigers was who? Pakistan. They were the tigers of Asia. It was the tiger of Asia. And see where it is today. So we should see that. And don't just think nothing will happen in India. यार तुम बड़े pessimistic हो. हम तो 5,000 year civilization है. यार सारे ही टूट जाते हैं. सोवियत यूनियन का हाल देख लो. ईस्टर्न यूरोप का हाल देख लो. और कितनी रैपिडली डिसाइड इन द एंड चीज जाती है. जैसे आजकल ट्रंप के साथ देख लो. तो हमें कौन सा वरदान है कि भी हमारे पर कुछ नहीं, हमें कुछ नहीं होगा. उसके एक सब just to annoy them more, I'll end with a couplet again of whom? Of Iqbal. वतन का फिक्र कर नादा, वतन का फिक्र कर नादा, तेरी बर्बादियों के मशवरे हैं आसमानों में.
I mean, it's so sad. I mean, we get all sorts of comments on the channel, thousands of comments. What really hurts me most is comments coming in, and people, of course, because YouTube is global, people watch us from Pakistan also. And you have these people who are aghast and who are writing, guys, what are you doing? So I get comments saying that, can't you see where you're heading? Don't make the same mistake. I have people in Pakistan writing comments saying, don't make the same mistake as we did 25 years ago. So yeah, that's where we are. So in that case, that we don't make mistakes, I think this is a good book, so that we don't follow and follow the facts and not the hype, which is literally the norm these days of following the hype. I wish you all the very best, sir, for this book, which now is hitting the shelves. Arun Shoure, many thanks for joining us here on Deshbhakt Samvaad. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you for having an admirer of yours on your program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.